So have you guys ever been shopping with somebody who is indecisive with what they're shopping for? Was that mostly men's voices I heard? I don't know what you're talking about. The other day I was shopping with my wife, and I have permission to tell this story, so women just know that she gave me permission. So I won't be in the doghouse, I don't think. And so we were out shopping, and she was looking for a new purse, or not a new purse, a new wallet to go inside of her purse. And so we were out looking, and there's all these options on the shelf. And men, your wallet options are, we know this. It's black, it folds in half. Like, I only have like 5 things to put in there. And so it goes in, it's real easy, it goes right in the pocket, right? But anyhow, she's looking and she's like trying to figure out how many pockets are there. Is there a clear spot for the driver's license or not? And then, she kind of does some quick technical, assessments of these wallets. But then the next step I didn't quite understand, because there was color options and size options and dimension options. And she's going through and she's whittling it down to smaller and smaller. And she finally gets down to just about 6 or 8 options left on. And she's like indecisive. I can't decide which way to go. And so anyhow, we, with my kind and compassionate guidance, after an hour of looking at these things, we've narrowed it down now to 2 options. And she's weighing, and I'm not really sure. And she's like, I don't really know. And she's kind of second guessing. And finally, an hour and a half into it, she says, I think I want to look at another store. Have you ever been shopping with somebody who's been indecisive on something? It happens, right? Have you ever been the person who is looking at something and you can't decide between 2 or 3 options? There's a different kinds of shopping methods out there. I'm more of a hunt and gather. I figure out what I'm going to get. I maybe have an exact picture in my mind. I walk into the store, no stops, no slowing down. If there's a greeter, I might head nod them as courtesy, maybe. And I go exactly to the department, beeline to no unnecessary hallways, get exactly what I want, head straight to the self-checkout because I don't want to talk to anybody. And then I self-check it and I go home, right? Mission accomplished, check that off my to-do list, on to the next thing. I'm more of a hunt and gather kind of guy. But if you've ever found yourself in a decisive situation, what that is when you can't decide between multiple things. Your mind thinks it's going to be one way, and then you think, no, maybe I should be another way. Men, if you're going to the men's retreat this weekend, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, it starts at, I think it's 5:30, as the dinner starts at 5:30, and so you think, I know that Google Maps says it's going to take me about an hour to get there, but I also know that Google Maps assumes that I'm going to go the speed limit, which I'm not. And so in your head, you start to play the game of when can I leave? Should I leave at 4:30? Leave at 4:15, maybe 4:45? I'm going to push no, leave at 4:30. Get there on time. It's going to be a good time, men. Don't be double-minded about when you're leaving for the men's retreat. You know what I'm saying? So when you can't decide which way you're going to go, I'm telling you that it's called a double-mindedness. When you're looking at one thing and then another, and you're back and forth and you can't decide. Now, it's cute and funny story when it's talking about a purse or what time we're going to arrive at a certain place. It's like, ha, ha, ha. But there are serious issues in life that if you're double-minded with them, you can end up into a little bit of a problem. In fact, if you live your life as a double-minded life, if you're always second-guessing your decisions, if you're always second-guessing which way to go, which thing to do, I can tell you there's a couple things that happen. And they don't happen immediately, but they start to happen over time. And one of the things that you'll find in your life is you'll find that you have surrounded yourself with people who are toxic. Because if you can't decide what you want in a relationship with your friends and your family, somebody else will decide for you. And you will find yourself surrounded by people that you may not want in your life. And so, your future is decided by the circle that you do associate with and the circle that you don't associate with. And so if you're double-minded in who you're going to be in relationship with, who you're going to go in business together with, what kind of situation you're going to be at work or at home, what kind of customers you're going to have or what kind of customer you're going to be, if you're double-minded in a business environment, you'll find yourself surrounded by people that you're not sure. But if you're single-minded in what you're doing, if you hunt and gather like I do with my shopping methods, if you hunt and gather, if you have a target that you're going for, then you find yourself surrounded by the people that you actually want to be surrounded by. If you're double-minded in life, you find yourself surrounded by people that you don't want to be with, that are destructive and toxic. I also know this, that if you're double-minded about things in life, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be worn out. It takes more than twice as much energy to be double-minded on something. I know this. I have this insurance thing at my house. I had some hail damage, and so I have to go find the contractor to do the repairs. My insurance is paying for it, but how many different contractors are there? And I can't decide, like, this is, so I start asking questions about this and that, and then I pull out my phone and I start Googling every little detail that could possibly be known about this repair that needs to happen to my house. And like, I'm not even really paying the bill, but I get so caught up in all the options that it starts to wear me out. I start to spend all kinds of hours on this thing rather than just picking something and going with it. But I don't want to mess up. I don't want to get the wrong thing. And so we get double-minded, and it starts to exhaust us because we spend so much time exploring all of the options out there. And if we're double-minded, it will keep you from experiencing life to the fullest. It'll keep you from experiencing life to the fullest. So if you find yourself in a situation surrounded by people you don't want to be surrounded by, if you find yourself, I'm just always tired and exhausted, I just don't have enough energy to get things done. And if you find yourself, I just knowing that you're not experiencing life to the fullest, I would say those are 3 symptoms you can look at. Maybe you're double-minded about something in life. And so we're in the middle of this series called Heroes. And today we're going to look at a hero who took care of double-mindedness. He went to a group of people who were kind of divided on what to do in life. And so he went and he said, okay, here's the line. You got to choose. Are you going to choose one or the other? Because you can't sit on the fence anymore. So we're going to look at the life of Elijah, at a story in the Bible. It's in 1 Kings chapter 18 is the pinnacle of where we're going to look at today. But the life of Elijah. And Elijah found himself in a situation where he thought he was the only person left who was standing for God. He was the only person left standing for God. And the Israelite people, who were God's people there, and so he was trying to stand for God. The Israelites couldn't decide, are we going to stand for God or are we going to stand for this other thing? And so what had happened is Israelites got a new king. His name is a new leader. His name is Ahab, and he married a woman named Jezebel. Now, if you ever heard the stories of Jezebel, or it's a popular name to diss on a woman, even in our day and age. But if you don't know the background, it comes from the Bible, and it comes from this story and this season in the Bible where this woman Jezebel, who was a really kind of totally an evil woman, who basically said, listen, you don't have to be single-minded about serving God. You can also serve another god called Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal. And so Baal, you can serve God and you can serve Baal. You can have both. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both things. And so the Israelites thought, wow, I can do both. I mean, that sounds good, doesn't it? I got options. I like options. And so the Israelites are in the middle of this thing. Well, what happened was the country had slowly drifted towards worshiping Baal more and more and more under the poor leadership that they had. And Elijah said, one day, he said, guys, you can't do this anymore. And so he goes to the king Ahab and he says, listen, because of the wickedness you've brought onto this country and into this God's people, I'm going to dry up the rain and it's going to have a drought indefinitely, a drought forever. And so now we have this drought that's been going for 3 years. I'm trying to set up this story for you before we get into the verses that we're going to get into. So how do you live a single-minded life? You don't want to live a double-minded life. How do you live a single-minded life? And so everybody's looking for Elijah because he's the one that said if the rain's going to stop, and he said it won't start again until I say it starts again. And so they're looking for Elijah. Where is this guy? Everybody's looking for him. And then one day, a guy named Obadiah runs into Elijah on the road. And so in 1 Kings 18, verses 16 and 17, it says, so Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, hey, that's what he told him. So Obadiah saw Elijah. Elijah said, I want to meet with Ahab and let's go meet on Mount Carmel. And so, which is a little mountain right there. And so Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is it you, the troubler of Israel? How would you like to be known as the troubler? See, here's the thing. The wickedness that had come across the land wasn't because of Elijah. Elijah was the one that just pointed out, hey, this is happening. It was actually brought on by Ahab. And so when you become somebody who's single-minded, there will be lines drawn in the sand. If you're single-minded, you are certain about a certain direction. You're certain about a certain way of life. In fact, if you become single-minded, becoming single-minded will actually single you out. Becoming single-minded will single you out. So Elijah walks into this crazy situation. Israel had done some great things in the past, but they found themselves with a poor leader, and they became double-minded. See, Ahab the king had married this wicked woman, and Jezebel and Ahab Jezebel had Ahab wrapped around her finger. You know, you've seen that couple before, haven't you? You're like, oh, she wears the pants. You know, like there's these accusations that happen. And I think that marriage is an equal thing where both people have their strengths. But when one person is in the weak spot and the other person is lording over, that's not healthy. Whether it's the man lording over the wife or the wife lording over the man. But in this situation, Jezebel is lording over, and she has Ahab wrapped around her finger. I guess she was scary, is what I heard. A scary lady. She led these people into worshiping Baal. You know, I was looking and studying what Baal worship was. And because today it's like, wow, it doesn't even make sense. Like, what is Baal worship? And when you start to look at the rituals that the people used in their worship to Baal, it basically fell into three different categories. And they fell into this. They were worshiping power. They were worshiping possessions. And they were worshiping pleasure. Power, possessions, and pleasure. Now, I know you look around our world and you think, there's none of that going on around here, is there? Turn on the TV, look at the news, and you're like, nobody's worshiping power. Oh, man, the president said something, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I've been out of shape because he tweeted. I don't know what he tweeted, but he tweeted something, and people have been out of shape because of the power situation. Possessions, people are chasing possessions like crazy. Have you noticed that? They try to get the newer, the better car, the bigger, the badder house. They try to get the possessions. If I just get more stuff, then I'll feel better. If I just get more power, then I'll feel better. If I get more stuff, I'll feel better. And then when that doesn't even work, they start to look at pleasure. And so they start to look at the way they get their money and then spend their money. And so they spend their money on pleasure things that people think if I can just put enough of this in my body, if I can just get enough of this pleasure experience, then I'm going to feel better. But the challenge with Baal worship and the challenge of the time then is the same challenge that we have today. You see, if you're looking to power, possessions, and pleasure, you're going to still feel empty at the end of the day. An extra zero in your bank account doesn't fix the hole in your heart. An extra trip to Vegas gambling doesn't fix the hole in your heart. That extra sexual exploration thing doesn't fix the hole in your heart. The extra pleasure doesn't do it. The extra influence doesn't do it. You're chasing the corporate ladder and you're running up the thing. You think, if I just get that next level of promotion, I'll have a little more influence and power, and it doesn't do it. There's not a high enough ladder that's going to get you that hole fixed in your heart. The satisfaction just isn't there. It's temporary. It's fleeting, which is why you chase it and you chase it and you chase it. And you'll never stop chasing it. So Elijah tells Ahab and Jezebel, because of their bad leadership, it wasn't going to rain. Crazy drought. No rain for years. It's over 3 years. You know, being a Christian isn't the easy life. Being a Christian isn't necessarily the easy coasting, everything goes right for you life. In fact, in the Bible, it even says that it likens Christianity to a war at times. You got to battle through stuff. You got to struggle through stuff at times. It likens it to a race that you've got to keep running even when you don't feel like running anymore. You know, it likens it to these different aspects that requires effort. But I'm telling you, when you're single-minded in following Jesus, life gets a lot better. And I'm going to show you some things. Yeah, you get singled out, but check this out. So Elijah, In verse 18, 16, we just read that, in Elijah and Obadiah, and so that Elijah thought he was the only one left. See, the enemy wants to tell you that you're fighting this battle alone, that there's nobody left. Everybody else is against you. Nobody else is with you. You feel like you're the only Christian at work. You feel like you're the only Christian in your family. You feel like you're the only person that's following God anywhere. And the devil will tell you you're alone in this. There's nobody else with you. You might as well just give up. But you're not alone, okay? You're not alone. You see, Obadiah was actually a follower of God. And when they went to go kill all of the followers of God, Obadiah went and hid a bunch of them in some caves. And so there was a bunch of prophets of God hiding out. And so there was actually a whole group of them. But Elijah just wasn't aware. So Elijah goes up and he challenges Ahab and Jezebel to a battle, the battle royale. We're going to duke it out. This is going down. It's mano y mano. It's my God versus your God. Let's just settle this once and for all, because all this double-minded, wishy-washy stuff has got to stop. We got to pick a side here. We can't keep sitting on the fence. And so he says, let's go to the top of Mount Carmel. Now, at the top of Mount Carmel is where they did most of their sacrifices and worshiping to Baal at the time. So this was almost like going into Baal's home field. Like Baal has the home field advantage at this point. They used to worship God up there a long time ago, but they haven't done it in years. And so he says, how about this? My God versus your God. Why don't you gather all of the prophets? Why don't you gather all of the prophets of Baal, all the people that are supporting Baal, and why don't you call all them, and let's go up to the mountain top, and let's have a battle and finalize this thing once and for all. You see, Elijah sends a message. If you're single-minded, there's times that you're going to send a message to people. You're going to be singled out, but you're also going to have to send a message. And so he sends a message to Ahab saying, we're going to duke it out. So Elijah sends the message to Ahab, and it ends up 850 supporters of Baal come to the top of this mountain. You see, Baal worship is a trap. When you put power, possessions, and pleasure as the goal that you're looking for, it becomes a trap. And I'm kind of a poet and don't know it, but I try to rhyme things in. But if you worship Baal, it'll end you in jail, because it contains you. I know it's stupid and lame, and my preacher echo, and when's he done? All right. So Baal puts you in jail if you start worshiping. The worship of power and possessions and pleasure will get you into a spin cycle that you just can't get out of, because there's just no satisfaction in it. Baal worship is everywhere we look. And so Elijah sends a message to Ahab, but then Elijah also sends a message to God's people. And in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 20, I think I put too many in the slides, didn't I? We'll just start at verse 18 there. And he answered, he says, I have not troubled Israel. This is Elijah saying, but you have, and your father's house, because you've abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now therefore, send and gather all Israel to meet me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. And so Elijah challenged the people. How long are you going to sit on the fence? Ooh. He says, how long are you going to sit on the fence? If God is the real God, follow him. If it's Baal, follow him, but make up your minds. And their response is typical double-mindedness. It was crickets. They sat there. Nobody said a word. Nobody made a move. So Elijah challenged the people. Oh, wait, we just did that one, didn't we? Nobody said a word. Nobody made a move. How long are you going to sit on the fence? If God is the real God, follow him. Make up your minds. The problem is the double-minded life. And so they decided that they were going to have a sacrifice off. They said, you sacrifice to your God, and I'll sacrifice to my God. And whoever's successful in what we're doing here is the winner. And of course, the Baal worshipers are like, this is money. We got like 850 of us versus one of you. And all these people in the stands, the Israelites watching, and they're like, this is easy. You're on our home field. Like, we got home field advantage. Like this is a no-brainer. And so they set up the rules, and they decided that they were gonna use two calves to slaughter and to put on their altar. And they built the altar up, and they put wood on it, and they put the calf on it. And so the rules were, whoever's God brings fire from heaven to burn up the sacrifice is the winner. Clear rules. Put your stuff in a pile, pray to your God, fire comes, you're the winner. And Elijah says, you can even go first. You can even go first. He put it all on the line, didn't he? He went to their home field, had them build an altar. They got to pick which animal they wanted. They got to pick everything out. They said, you can even go first, which means this: if their God had dropped fire from heaven, Elijah would have lost, maybe without even getting a shot. People would have been fired up. They probably would have killed him right there on the spot. And he really put himself out there on a limb. And so they start praying. And the prophets of Baal start praying to their God, and they start dancing, and they start singing, and they start making all this noise. And it goes on for hours and hours and hours. And Elijah's getting bored. He's like, come on, guys. When are you going to give up? It's got to be my turn now, right? They didn't set up a clock and how long. And so they're going, and so then Elijah starts trash talking them. I love this, the first trash talking in the Bible that I can see. And so Elijah, he starts trash talking. Every sports fan in here is like, yeah. And he's like, oh, what's up? What's up, boys? Where's Baal? Is he on vacation? Maybe he can't hear you. He's out on the beach right now. You got to shout a little louder. And then they're shouting and shouting, and they're making all this noise. And they say, well, maybe he's busy, like, it basically says he's on the bathroom, right? So he's in the bathroom, he's doing this, maybe he's busy, he's occupied. And so they're trying harder, and they're trying harder, and they're harder. And finally, they're just exhausted. For 9 hours, they made a huge, huge mess of things. And then Elijah says, all right, boys, it's my turn. It's my turn. And so he goes over to the old altar that used to be used for sacrificing to Jehovah God, the God of the Israelites. And he says, well, we got to rebuild this thing. And so in Scripture, it says that Elijah went and got the 12 stones, and Elijah got the logs, and Elijah, and he dug a moat. And it's like, man, that's one dude that would have taken him forever. And I kept reading around it, and I'm like, how long would it have taken to build this thing back up again? And my guess is I think he may have had a few volunteers from the people of Israel. I bet that it was like, come on, let's just get this over with. This is taking all day, And so he's over there building, and as the Israelites are watching him, and I bet on some level helping to help him build it. In fact, it says that once he built it all up and it got it completely built, he had it soaked in water over and over and over again. Listen, if he's saying that, like, listen, my God can do it even while it's soaking wet wood. There's no spontaneous igniting happening here. I didn't flick a match on this thing. I didn't just put my butt out on this thing and have it light up. There's no trickery here. We're soaking this bad boy down. The animal is soaked. The wood is soaked. In fact, they had dug a little moat around it to catch all the water, and the moat is filling up with water. There's water all over this thing. Water all over this thing. Single-mindedness creates margin. Because here's what happens next. Elijah finishes the entire thing. And he says, hey, God, it's time for you to show yourself real. In fact, this is exactly what he says in verse 36, 18, verse 36. It says, when it was time for the sacrifice to be offered, Elijah the prophet came up and prayed, oh God, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, make it known right now that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant, and that I am doing what I'm doing under your orders. And it goes on to verse 37, but this is, scholars say this, that there's a pause written there, almost as if maybe Elijah expected God to drop fire in that moment. One little prayer, and he turns and says, answer me, God. A little bit of desperation, don't you think? Oh, answer me, God. It's good for us to be desperate for God, you know. Oh, answer me and reveal to this people that you are God, the true God, and that you are giving these people another chance at repentance, another chance at repentance. Now, that whole thing probably took him a minute to say. And in 1 minute, that's all it took was a simple prayer saying, God, we just need another chance. Will you give me another chance at repentance? And fire fell from heaven, it said. And it didn't just burn up the sacrifice, it burned up the wood. It didn't just burn up the wood, it burned up the stones. It didn't just do all of that, it also burned up the water that was in the moat. Listen, single-mindedness buys you margin. Double-mindedness, you spend your time all the time trying to figure out which way to go. It doesn't seem to make sense. But when you're following God, there was a margin of 9 hours, 8 hours and 59 minutes worth of praying that happened in here. These guys, the old guys, went nuts for 9 hours and no response. Elijah prayed a simple prayer, and God answered him right where he was at. Listen, following God in a single-mindedness creates margin in your life. It creates margin in your life. Can't even imagine it. You see, single-mindedness does this too. It demands a decision. How long are you going to sit on the fence? I tell you, there's times that where I'm following God in a single-minded way, and it's not a problem, but there's times where I hesitate and I start to have some double-mindedness. God, are you calling me over here? Are you calling me over here? Or what are my options here? You know, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? And double-mindedness creeps in very subtly. And it starts out as it's good. It starts out as, well, I'm just trying to hear from the Lord. But it starts to creep and creep and creep. And pretty soon, you're not even sure which way is up anymore. Your double-mindedness may become triple-mindedness or quadruple-mindedness. It can grow. Elijah demanded an answer. How much longer are you going to sit on the fence? So I ask you today, how much longer are you going to sit on the fence? How much longer are you going to weigh the options? How much longer are we going to pollute our decision-making with the power and the possessions and the pleasure? Because the prophets of Baal, they cried out. And I'm telling you, in this world, you look around and people are screaming. They're screaming. They're saying, power, where are you? Why is this so empty? Possessions, why haven't you not filled the hole in my heart? My house is huge. My car is great, but I still feel empty inside. And people scream out possessions, and they scream pleasure. Why? I can't get enough pleasure to fill the hole in my heart. How much longer will we sit on the fence? How much longer will we wait to see what's going to happen? We're sitting on the fence. But you know, Jesus lived a single-minded life. When Christ came to earth, he lived a single-minded life. He had one mission, and one mission was to fulfill the prophecies of the Old Testament and die for our sins and pay the price so that we might be in right relationship with God again. And when we sit on the fence and we're not sure which way to go, sometimes we've fallen off the fence even into the wrong area. We've fallen onto the wrong side of the fence. But here's the great news. In the middle of that fence, Jesus provides a gate. He provides a door, a gateway to get through the fence that we've maybe fallen off on the wrong side. In John 10, verse 9 and 10, it says, I am the gate. He's not a gate. He's not a door. He's not a way. In fact, he also says, I am the truth. I am the life. I am the way. He's not a way, a truth, a life. He is the singular, single-minded, not plurality, not plural-minded. So in John 10:9, it says, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved, and they will come in and out and find pasture. One translation says they will find rest. out of double-mindedness, chasing the power and the possessions and the pleasure, and we get exhausted and we're not sure which way to go. We find ourselves surrounded by people we don't really want to be surrounded, but Jesus, he brings rest. He brings rest. See, Jesus is the gate. He brings salvation, a way for us to be back in relationship with God, which, my friend, is the only way to find true satisfaction in life. You see, Jesus is the gate, and he brings safety. And it may not feel that safe sometimes here on earth, but he brings a safety that is an eternal safety. In the unsafe waters around us, he brings us a comfort and a safety. And he brings us some satisfaction. You know, the gate's there. It's not even locked. It's not hard to get through. The other day I was at Lowe's yesterday, and I was working on some plumbing in my house, and had to go get some parts. And you know, plumbing is just nasty, isn't it? Like, I'll work on my plumbing because it's, you know, my stuff, but I'm not working on yours, all right? So I go to Lowe's, get some plumbing parts, and so I go walking up, and I grab a cart, and I had my headphones in. I was listening to some music. I was in my own world. I wasn't even paying attention. And they have these, you know, the motion doors that you walk up to. And I walked right up to it and just, boom. I was like, whoa. And I stopped, and I was like, what? And nobody, I don't think anybody saw. And so I'm not sure what to do. I'm looking, I'm like, whoa, did anybody see that? Was the first thing I thought. The second of all, then I'm looking, I was like, why didn't, oh, and there's a sign, you know, door out of order, go to the other side, you know, and I was in my own world. And so I walked around to the other side, and then, you know, I walked up to the other door, and as I approached it, you know, the thing saw me, and it opened, and there's another door, and it had a little motion, and I walked right through, but you know, it's kind of funny, right? Because sometimes we think we found it, we found the gate because through power, and we think we found it through possessions, we think we've found it through pleasure, and as we're walking up to it, we think that's it, that's the gate, that's the door, that's the satisfaction, that's the safety, that's what we're looking for, and we walk up to it, and we think it's no big deal because we walk up with kind of confidence, don't we? But then all of a sudden and we're like, ow, I kind of left a mark, right? I didn't like that. Listen, God is like that motion-activated door. If you just walk up to it with confidence, the door opens for you. You don't even have to turn a knob. Like, that's the crazy thing about the gate and the door that God brings into your life. All you got to do is just walk up to it and just say, yeah, I'm choosing this day who I'm going to serve. I'm going to end the double-mindedness. I'm going to end the split decision-making. I'm going to end the different paths. I'm going to end all this stuff and just say, no, I'm choosing this day whom I'm going to serve. And this is the beautiful thing about following Christ is that we don't have to look at every 10,000 options that are out there on the planet today. We have, in God's word, we have a very clear defined path on what it means to follow Jesus and serve the Lord. And so our decision-making process gets a whole lot easier because we're not trying to compare our lives to a moving target like this world provides for all of us. It's actually just a very simple target that we do when we follow Christ. But sometimes we just make it way more complicated. We just got to walk up to the motion doors that actually work, which is Jesus. We walk up to the motion doors. We just walk right in. And I'm telling you that God provides a way for us to live a single-minded life. And we can end double-mindedness in our life. You might be a believer here today, and you're saying, yeah, I've actually been struggling with this. Listen, there is hope because we serve a God who wants us to live a single-minded life, and he wants us to live a life of following him. But, you know, you might be here this morning, and you're not following Jesus, and you're like, I don't really know. Maybe you've been sitting on the fence for a long time and you're not even sure about this. But this morning, I want to give you an opportunity to walk through the gate. The motion-activated door that opens for you when you approach it. Because Jesus wants to open that door for you. The gate is there. All you got to do is just say yes and walk in. It's pretty simple, really. It takes options off the table, but that's okay. Because you have margin in your day, margin in your time. There's satisfaction that comes in your life that you just never knew was there when you start following the Lord. It's wild. And so, church, my hope for you, for everyone in this room is this, is you've been wrestling with some double-mindedness in your life. Renew today. Commit today that you're going to follow the Lord. Commit today, yeah, no, I'm going to end this now. The double-mindedness is over. Today's a new day, and I'm going to walk through this gate again. And I'm going to walk right through this door, and I'm going to say, no, I'm living a single-minded lifestyle. So many of our decisions in life get complicated because we think about it too much. But when we go look exactly what God says to do, it gets pretty simple. And life just gets easy again because you don't have to make all these crazy decisions. You just follow what God says. I know this sounds really simplistic, but it kind of is that. Following the Lord is kind of simplistic when you break it down. We make it complicated. And so my hope for you today is that if you're following the Lord today and you've found yourself struggling with a double-minded lifestyle, I want you to commit today to start afresh in a single-minded lifestyle. And if you're here today and you've been sitting on the fence and you've not made a decision to follow Jesus, or maybe you did and it was a long time ago, and you're saying, you know what, I got back on top of this fence and I need to get back off and walk through the gate again. I need to follow Jesus again. I want to give you an opportunity to make that decision right now. And I'm going to close, and so if the keyboardist would come, we're going to wrap up right now. You know, if you've walked up to this door, if you're looking at the door and you're wondering about this gate and you're wondering about Jesus, could it really be true? He's standing right there. He's opening the door for you. He's ready for you to come in. And so, really, can we go from a double-minded life into a single-minded life? So with every head bowed and every eye closed, if you're here this morning and you've been riding the fence, you've been looking at this and saying, you know what, I've been thinking about following Jesus, but I haven't really made up my mind. And maybe today's the day you want to make that decision.